All right, let's just dive right into this explainer and unpack the fascinating, kind of invisible constitutional machinery that actually makes elections work. Today, we're exploring the really critical concepts laid out in the chapter on election and representation. It's so easy to think of democracy as just people showing up and casting votes. But there is this entire massive architecture working behind the scenes that dictates exactly how those individual votes are translated into actual, real world power. So, we're going to break down exactly how this playbook is written. To really wrap our heads around this, think about it for a second. What would actually happen to a game of cricket if there were absolutely no umpires? Or imagine sitting down to play chess, but suddenly your opponent decides their knight is just going to move in straight lines instead of an L shape. I mean, total chaos, right? In any sport or game, you absolutely need agreed upon rules and a completely impartial referee before the game can even start. Well, our electoral politics is exactly the same. It requires a super strict framework. If you change those rules, you completely change the outcome of the game itself. And because these rules are just so foundational, they can't be left to the whims of whatever government happens to be in power today. They have to be hardwired right into the Constitution.
So, here's our game plan for today. 1. The rules of the game. 2. India's election system. 3. Representing everyone fairly. And 4. Ensuring free and fair play.
Okay, kicking things off with Section 1, the rules of the game, defining democracy's playbook. Now, here's a really interesting thought experiment for you. Can we actually have a democracy without holding elections? And on the flip side, can we hold elections without actually having a real democracy? It kind of forces us to realize something super important. Just going through the mechanical motions of voting doesn't automatically guarantee a democratic outcome. The actual rules governing how the election is run, like who even gets to vote, how the choices are presented, and how the votes are tallied up at the end, those are the things that actually breathe life into the whole concept of democracy. The whole reason we need this complex machinery in the first place really just boils down to scale. Like in an ancient Greek city-state, sure, all the citizens could literally gather in a public square and vote directly on a new law. But let's be real, direct democracy is completely impossible when you're dealing with massive populations of lakhs and crores of people. Because we obviously can't all squeeze into the parliament building together, citizens have to choose representatives to govern and run the country on their behalf. Therefore, the method we use to choose those representatives, our election system, becomes the single most crucial mechanism in our entire political structure.
Moving right along to Section 2, India's election system, how we keep score.
Okay, so here's the absolutely crucial thing to understand about the first past the post, or FPTP system. You do not necessarily need an absolute majority to win. You literally just need to cross the finish line first. Think of it like a foot race with 5 runners. The winner isn't the person who finishes the race in under a minute. The winner is simply the one who beats the other 4 runners, even if it's just by a fraction of a second. In an election, if you get more votes than any other single candidate in your specific constituency, you win that seat. It doesn't matter if you got a commanding 51% of the total vote or just 25% in a really heavily divided field. A win is a win. Now, you might be sitting there wondering, well, why not just use a system where if a party gets 30% of the country's votes, they get 30% of the seats? Makes sense, right? That's called proportional representation, or PR. But the Constitution makers very deliberately chose FTPP over proportional representation. And why? Because India operates on a parliamentary system of executive government. This kind of system desperately needs a stable executive backed by a really clear majority in the legislature. The PR system, because it strictly divides seats based on exact vote shares, can very easily lead to a fractured mandate where nobody has a clear majority. And that makes forming a stable, decisive government incredibly tough. FTP, purely by design, tends to produce much clearer winners. And you can see this dynamic perfectly illustrated in some major historical moments. Take, for example, times when the Congress Party secured a massive 3/4 majority in the Lok Sabha. Under the FTP rules of the game, a party might secure, let's say, 48% of the total national vote. But because their candidates managed to cross the finish line first in so many individual, separate constituencies, they could actually end up winning 80% of the actual seats in parliament. It definitely gives smaller parties a really steep hill to climb, but it absolutely delivers that stable majority the system was originally designed to produce. Which brings us nicely to Section 3, representing everyone fairly, leveling the playing field. Because FTP is such a winner-takes-all race in every single constituency, it can naturally work to the huge disadvantage of smaller or historically marginalized social groups. In the Indian social context, with a really deep history of caste-based discrimination, a pure FTP system could literally just mean dominant groups win absolutely everywhere. So, to level the playing field, the rulebook includes reserved constituencies where only candidates from specific communities are allowed to stand, even though everyone in that area still gets to vote. And the really cool thing is, this playbook is still evolving today to be more inclusive. We just saw this with the Nari Shakti Vandanadiniyam, the Women's Reservation Act of 2023, which actually secures 1/3 of the seats for women, ensuring a much fairer representation of the entire population.
And finally, let's wrap up with Section 4, ensuring free and fair play. The referees.
Ultimately, the true test of any election system is its ability to actually ensure a completely free and fair electoral process. And the absolute bedrock of that in India is the universal adult franchise. It's an absolutely monumental undertaking, completely consistent with the core principles of equality and non-discrimination. Think about it. Every single adult citizen gets exactly one vote, and every single vote carries the exact same weight, whether you are a billionaire CEO or a daily wage earner. It is literally the great equalizer in the entire democratic game. But to manage a process that massive, you need a seriously strong referee, and that is the Independent Election Commission. When they step in and enforce their strict code of conduct, politicians rightfully start to sweat a little bit. What's truly fascinating here is that it's pretty widely agreed the Election Commission has become incredibly assertive and independent over the last 25 years. But get this, it wasn't because the Constitution was suddenly changed to give them a bunch of shiny new powers. Not at all. The Election Commission simply started using the immense powers it already had in the Constitution much more effectively. A good umpire doesn't necessarily need new rules. They just need to enforce the existing ones without any fear or favor.
Now, it's super important to note that changing any of these core constitutional rules of the game, whether that's the powers of the Election Commission or the voting system itself, isn't something you can just do on a whim. It requires what is called a special majority in Parliament. We're not just talking about a simple 51% here. It usually means getting a 2/3 majority of those present and voting, plus an absolute majority of the total membership of the House. It's a deliberately stringent requirement designed to ensure there is massive, broad consensus before the foundational playbook of the democracy can be altered. It just proves how incredibly carefully these rules are guarded against temporary political moods.
So, I want to leave you with a bit of a provocative thought today on the whole ongoing debate around electoral reforms. We've just seen that simply having a more assertive election commission drastically improved the game, and they did it without a single constitutional amendment. So ask yourself, is the current rulebook completely finished? Or is it maybe time for a software update to address modern challenges in campaigning and representation? Think about whether we actually need to rewrite the rules or if we just need to get better at playing the game. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and remember to always keep questioning the rules of the game.